John Britt here. Today we're going to make a three-piece mold. So it's a lot of stuff, but I'm hoping to do it systematically. Here's what you need usually for molds is cottles like this to make a mold shape. But I like using this metal, so I'm going to show you that in a minute. But let's first show you this book. So if you ever want to make a mold, this is a great book by Andrew Martin. It's got everything you need in there. All right, now what I did in my previous videos is a one-piece mold, and then this something like this was a two-piece mold. So you would press clay in there, press it down, lift it up, and you would have the mold of this was a deer bone. But today we're going to make like a mold for a pear. The reason this is necessary is because like the bottom of the pear has a little indent here, and if you did a two-piece mold, it would get caught up. So the other thing about this is it's cheap and easy, and you can practice on more complicated forms. I could probably make this with two pieces and just make the indent myself, but it will give you the idea of how to make a mold. Okay, so this is what we're making. This is the first piece and the second piece and then the third piece. Okay, and so when you start your mold, you usually you'll try to draw the line where they're going to pull away. Like this is going to pull away and then the bottom will pull away. Sometimes I'll take a little tool and hold it when I'm looking straight on at it. And if the tip disappears like down here, then you know there's an undercut there. So, I mean, it's obvious if you've made molds, you know that, but if you haven't, you may have to systematically go through. So what we're going to do is have one piece as the bottom. This will come off, and each side will come off. Okay? So what we first do, you can see all these tools here. I'm going to talk a little bit more about them as we go, but what I first do is roll out a slab. I take a loop tool and sort of cut away where my pear is going to go, and then I'm going to push it down to that line. I'll see that line, and I'll push it down. And then sometimes what I have to do is come in like this, and I'll have to push everything over to fill it up to that line. Okay? So I'll do the same thing on this side. And then I will be ready. So then you can take your time, smooth this out. And then there's some tools you use. This is like a squared piece of wood, and so I can come in here like this and just make that nice and perpendicular there, so it's real nice. Smooth all this out. I'm not going to do all of it so just to take less time, but you're going to make it nice. Now this one I've cut the bottom out a little. I'm going to push this down to that black line I drew. So that's my bottom of the mold. Will be the bottom piece I'm covering here. We're just gonna see, we're making this piece now. This is what we're making. Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we need some registration points here so that the mold will stick together good. So I put them on like this, and I'll put a couple here. Sometimes you can even go like this. That's a decent hole there, so that when they cleat, they're like keys when they cleat together. All right, so now what I'm going to do, take this piece of metal that I've got. It's just a piece of flashing, and sometimes what I'll do, if it's too big, I will take one of this tool and I'll cut it a little smaller. But for right now, we're just going to leave it as it is. But you can make these all the sizes you want. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how big to make it. I'm going to hold it together real good. I'm going to go over top of this, and then I'm going to push it down. And what I usually do is I have these gloves. So sometimes you need gloves for this. Not always, but you just move very slowly when you're working with metal. You don't want to get cut. All right, so now I think you can look in there and see what we've done. Yeah. Okay, so now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to make our plaster. So right here now you can see what I need. I need, this is what I'm going to weigh out, about 3 pounds of plaster and 2 pounds of water. More precisely would be this chart from the book, 2 pounds, 14 ounces. But here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to put this on the scale. You can get the idea, and normally I would wear this mask. But in lieu of that, today, what we're going to do is we're going to go outside, and we are going to... So what this essentially is you have 1 container of this and about 2 containers of the plaster. All right? So we're going to go outside and do this so we don't have any dust. All right. It's raining, by the way. And there's turkeys here. And by the way, what this is it's really a quart of water. So 4 cups of water is the same as, I think it was it 2 pounds? I can't remember. Anyway, so I'm going to pour this in here. I'm not going to breathe in. It's not as bad as clay dust because it's not silica or anything, but I just try to avoid all dust. Okay, that's good enough. Now all I'm trying to do is get the dust out. So just wet it a little. All right? All right, now we're going to go over here and I'm going to use my handy dandy mixer. Normally you could just stir that, or a lot of people stir it with their hand, but I like this mixer. Now, this is not the best way to do it because the mixer sometimes introduces air into it. So just be careful that you don't do that. Okay, another thing, people who really do plaster molds for a living would not cringe at this, but a lot of times what you do is you'll let your plaster slake into the water for a while, and they have a whole timing thing they do. The reason you weigh it is because you want to have a certain absorption. So if you put in too much water, it won't absorb slip casting, but we're doing a press mold, so it really doesn't matter. So then what I just do is tap it like this, and that gets all the air bubbles up. You can see them in there. So I just tap this. Now, sometimes what I do, I don't have it here, I will take a brush and brush the first coat of this on, but you can watch in there how it is. I'm just going to pour it in the side here and let it slowly fill up. Sometimes now I would come in and I don't have a brush, but I would brush this on here like that. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing that's important. I spray, I forgot to do that. But these are already coated. I'll spray like Pam on the inside in there, or Vaseline. So I'll just do it now to show you. I usually will put it on my metal, so and on my piece itself, so I don't, so it doesn't stick. All the plaster doesn't stick there. But I've been using these cottles to. You'll see how many molds I made to show you this. So they're all gooed up anyway, and the pear doesn't really. It'll resist the plaster anyway. All right. So now I'm going to stop right there, and then a lot of times, I'll pound on this table and get some of the air bubbles up. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to put this down here. We'll worry about that later. All right. So now that I have done that, what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to show you what if this dried, this is what we would have. So now what I do is I cut this away. Okay, I'll take that away. Sometimes I'll save that because if I'm doing multiple molds, I may need it in 5 minutes here. All right, you see I use duct tape to, sometimes I'll put duct tape here. See this? I don't need it here because it's very much pressed in there, but if I was making a big one, I would definitely use tape. The one thing you do not want, and you won't know it until it's happened, is when your mold explodes and plaster goes everywhere. But this is a small one, so it's pretty easy. All right, so now I'm going to take this off. All right, so this is my, now peel this back. Okay, so now these are going to be my other two pieces. This is my first piece, and then I'm going to make these other two pieces. So I'm going to lay this back in here. Okay, now what we want to do is now make this bottom piece. So we are going to, let me get a knife here. We're going to build this up so we have a place to pour. I'll put this here, back in here. I'll put this here. So now what I want to do is I want to go everything up to this mold. This is the piece we're going to be making next. So it's going to go, so we have to build this up a little. So we're going to put this like here, approximately. And then you can see that hopefully. And so now, of course, a lot of times you're going to have to come in here with little things of clay and make everything. You don't want any holes down there, like so you don't want the plaster to run in between these two. And then you'll probably put this like I did before. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to take this tool and make that nice and neat. I'd really be good about being neat with plaster molds because it's going to be that way as long as it is alive. So you want to make, you don't want little things laying around. All right. Just for our purposes, that's probably good. Now, once again, I'm going to make my keys. Now what I'm going to do, now what I'm going to do is put my coddle back on. Let me see if I can get this. Okay. Now, what I'll do is push this clay around here to hold everything in place. Okay. So I'll push, and then what I'll do is take this little, you see how there's a space there? That's not really good, so sometimes what I'll do is I'll just press this up against that. And that pushes the metal in some. Okay, and now since I'm doing doing this very fast for you, what I will do, if I have any overlap, I will come in here with this clay and just fill up. You see how I'm filling that hole? And you see that there's other holes there. So I'll come in here, like if that's a big old hole, I'll just come in and fill it. Okay? And later we can scrape the mold with these tools like this. We can scrape them. I'll show you that in a second. All right, so now, as long as my, I made one error. What I have to do now is, I don't want this to be all the way filled up. Although I can make a mold like that. Let me show you this one. Here's the way if I filled this up, I would have a mold that release here and these two that release. But what I'm trying to make is this one where I have a flat one that covers everything. So what I need to do now is come in here and cut this back a little. Okay, so I'm going to cut this back. And then I'll put this back in here. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to just do this sort of quickly without doing it perfectly, so you'll get the idea. Okay, so I'd smooth that out nicely. And now what I'm going to do is do my registration points here. Okay? So now what I have to do, I cannot have the plaster sticking to the plaster. So I can either spray it with this PAM. Other times, real mold makers oftentimes use Murphy's oil soap. You would soap it up, let it dry, soap it, let it dry, soap it, let it dry. I have had molds stick, and I'm just making press molds, so it doesn't matter. So I like to use Vaseline, so I can just, this stuff will not let anything in there, so you get all the pores filled up. So I do that. That's a super good way. If you don't like that way, you can use the PAM. PAM's down and dirty. Easy. Spray the sides. Okay, and sometimes I'll even come in with a brush, and you see I have little things in there. I can brush it. I can brush on here a little, make it real nice. Okay, now I would pour again. I'm not going to mix it up again and pour, but I would pour this again and fill it up. Okay, that would then take us down to this mold. All right, so pretend I poured that. Now I have this mold. So I'm going to undo this one. All right. Just so, since I promised to tell you, I will often just take this tool. I'll show you on this side. And while it's still soft, you can bevel the edge, make it real nice. You can also use this Stanley Sureform to do it. So you can, when your mold's about still warm even, I'll come in and clean those edges. And that'll make it real good. So you see what we've got here. Let's get our original mold, and I'll show you where we're at. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So we did the first one, and the second pour is here. The second pour is this one, like that. And now we're going to end up with like this. And now we're going to pour this one. Okay? So here it is. And now I will take this off. So you see what we've got left? Now all we need to do is either, I usually will Vaseline this in here. Make sure that we're not going to stick. And then, you know, I could use the PAM like I said. Spray all this. And like sometimes see it's like foamy, so you may not like that. So that's when I will take not this brush, but a clean one, and I'll just come in and make sure everything is covered here. But you don't want that foamy stuff on there. Okay? So I would do that, and then I would take my metal again, put it back on here. Let me just tell you this. The reason that you may like this type of mold where I could make a flat bottom. This one is going to be oval, and then I would have to lay it on its side. So you have to decide what you want to do. Another thing you should know is if you ever wanted to, you can make this in a slip mold. So you could either drill a hole to put the slip in the side, like I could just drill like right here and make a hole. Or before I'm casting, I could put in this PVC pipe, and that would give me a nice hole that would accept the slip pour. Okay? But since we're doing press molds, we're just going to do this now. I'll put this metal back on here. Let's see here a minute. Okay. All right, so now the UPS guy's coming, just so if you hear that. All right, so now we've gotten this. All right, so now you can see in there what we've got. If I have to, you know, if I had to fill any of that, or if I can just push it closed, I will. I'll check everything, then I'll mix my plaster up, and I'll pour that and fill that up. And then I will be done. I will have, this would be what I end up with. Once that's done, I would take the coddle off, and there it is. There's my mold. 3-piece mold. Okay? Now just so in case you don't know, here is how you make it. You would then put a slab in, and then you press it in. I would press a slab like this. Press this in. And then sometimes I'll just make a coil, like a coil shape. Press it in like this. Get it, and I would make it nice and smooth and do it real good. And then I would take this scoring tool. I would score this all. And sometimes I'll even like put water. You notice I'm not doing the stem because the stem will just usually breaks off. So I usually cut a hole in it and make a stem that I put in later. And then I'll press this down. I should wait for this to release. Maybe it will release. I don't know. Let's try it. Yeah, so then there's our pear. And what we will do is then clean up the edges. You know, because I should have pressed it harder and waited a while. But what you'll do is press that and smooth over the joint. And then you can make press molds from that. All right, I think I have told you everything. I hope so. And good luck making them. You only have to make 10 today. All right, see ya.